said, "Do we really have to go today?" I said, "Can't you just wait till tomorrow?" He says, "Look," he said, "I don't know whether this is true or not, but he said, I believe that if I don't go and get this thing called absolution from a Catholic priest today, that I will be dead tonight." I said, "Wait a minute, you're not getting suicidal on me?" And he said, "Oh, absolutely not." He said, "You couldn't think of such a thing when you're going through this experience I'm going through." He says, "If I even begin to do something that's sinful," he said, "I have the most terrible pain in my heart and the most terrible sense of offending the love of God," that he said during these last 2 days, he said, I couldn't do anything wrong if I wanted to. It would cripple me. I said, "Well, that's very interesting." I said, "Well, okay, we'll go up there." And I said, "What do you mean you're going to die tonight?" He says, "Well," he says, "I'm going to die of a broken heart." He says, "My heart is breaking." He says, "I don't see how my soul can stay in my body any longer." He said, "This is the greatest grief that you could ever imagine." And he said, "It's the greatest experience of love." He says, "That's why it is so filled with grief." So we went on and we talked all the way up and we prayed continuously, and I tried to pray for him to get some kind of relief, and we got up there. So when we got there, I went to the chapel and I went before the tabernacle, and my constant prayer was, Jesus, you know and I know that this is probably this experience of the warning or purification, something like that, and it's on the level. But I said, most of the world won't understand that. So I said, please let this man make a perfect confession, because if I take him back to Indianapolis and his wife sees him acting like this, she's going to think there's something wrong with him mentally. So to make a long story short, he made an hour-and-a-half confession, and he came back, and he is the most well-balanced, happiest man I know today. And he has left the Anglican Church, and he's in the process of being received into the Catholic Church. As a footnote, to decide whether or not something's valid, one of the things I look at as a lawyer is I look at the laws of the Church. So when I returned to Indianapolis the next day, I looked up the canon law, because I thought, well, how could it be that this priest gave a person who's not a member of the Catholic Church absolution? And of course, the law of the Church since 1983, as approved by the Holy Father, says that a baptized non-Catholic may receive absolution from a priest, one, in danger of death, and second, for another grave reason as approved by the bishop. So it's very easy for a priest, when a man comes in and says, if I don't get this from you, I'll tell you everything, I'll do whatever you have to do in the Catholic Church to receive this sacrament, but if I don't get this from you, I am going to die. And I thought, well, it's probably pretty easy for a priest to decide that even though this person's not a Catholic, he can give him absolution. He later went on to explain to me that he was given to understand that if he had not been, that he was validly baptized. And I said, well, why is that? He said, because if I hadn't been validly baptized, all I would have needed is baptism in order to get this relief. But once you've been baptized, you have to have this thing called absolution. Then he went on to explain very cogently about the sacraments. And I tested him. I said, well, you're in the Anglican Communion. They have probably pretty much the same teaching traditionally on the sacraments. And he said, not like this. He said, I was given a teaching so I can name he said, I can name all 7 of the sacraments. And he said, the name I may give them may not be the name the church officially calls them, but I can describe them in detail and tell you what every aspect of it. And he said, I can tell you I never knew what those were. But he was given that, he said, as part of this revelation. So in any event, it seems to be a tremendous experience of the mercy of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary for this man. And his wife is not as attuned to this, so the reason I'm giving you this witness is because he thinks his wife is the point that he can explain it to her. He hasn't wanted to tell his wife. So he said to me, he said, please witness on this. Give my witness for me. Because he said, until my wife's at the place where I think she can understand this, I don't want to talk about it publicly. And I keep telling him he ought to give the witness. And so that's the reason I've told the story this evening.